Hi everybody, this is Rita Townsend. Welcome to my Live Friday Facebook. Let me tag a few of my friends here and we'll get started in just a minute. I want to thank you for joining me. If you're joining me on the live, I love that. Please feel free to comment. If you're joining me on the replay, I love that also because I get a huge response on my replay. So I really appreciate that as well. And you can comment and send me some questions, and I'm happy to answer those also if you're listening in on the replay. So it's Friday afternoon. I'm getting spoiled with this Friday afternoon on the patio because I come outdoors on my patio, and for just a few minutes I enjoy the view, and sometimes it's very, very quiet like today, and I don't have to worry about any interruptions, and that's a very rare time that most of us are guilty of not taking those few minutes to really refresh and focus. And now more than ever, we need that. So today I have two stories to share with you. And it's one of those things that it's not all good news, but it's necessary news. We are still living in a constant flow of change. It's almost daily. Sometimes it's just hourly on things that we're having to deal with in terms of the quarantine, the pandemic, the rules, the restrictions. And it's just really becoming part of our daily lives to expect those kinds of things. And it's because we're learning more and more that we're getting this information. And that's really what I want to share with you today. And I'm going to end in a few minutes with a really important message. These really are important to know. And these, the stories that I'm going to share with you today have more to do with what we're beginning to learn about long-term effects of both, hi Lenora, both the virus and some of the stress factors, hey Eileen, regarding the aftermath of the virus. And the things that I'm sharing with you today are not things that you're going to hear in the news. But because of my business, I'm constantly on the lookout for information. I subscribe to a lot of newsletters, and I work with a lot of doctors. So I also try very hard to practice what I'm preaching. But we all are feeling challenged. And there are just simply situations that kind of get the best of us. But I want to put all of that in perspective today, because this may not be something that you're dealing with personally, but you may be hearing more and more about friends and family who are dealing with this. And for us, in our circle of friends, it's really not our friends, but it's their kids. And that is sort of the next go around of this thing. So whether or not you have been dealing with this or it's someone that you know, these are some really important things for you to simply be aware of. And here's the first story. This really caught my eye. This is information from WebMD. You're going to hear me preach about this a lot, but the more we learn, the more false information we get. And if you are getting advertising, marketing information, and well-meaning friends sending you ridiculous stuff, please do not go there. Stick with the really valid sources, and I'm going to remind you of those in a minute. But this is from WebMD, and this is talking about a young man in his 30s who, after getting prepared for a great new job that he'd really worked hard for, began feeling a little nervous and a little stressed. And the night before his new job, he started losing his normal taste. He was having a nice dinner to celebrate the new job, and things weren't right. He thought that it was just a case of nerves, and it might be just something just to pass off and ignore. But sometime in the middle of the night, he woke up, and this is a young man in his 30s, with fever, sweats, and chills. He tried to deal with it at home for a few days. But after a few days, he decided it was best to go to the hospital. But he still was thinking that this was a panic reaction and not an illness like COVID, because he typically wasn't in that group. Fast forward, he spent some time in the hospital. He did make a good recovery, but it was a while, and it was longer than you might think for a 30-year-old. The reason that he shared this story is because even throughout the journey of understanding that this is what he was dealing with, after he was well and beginning to get back to his new job and his normal life, there were lingering effects. And these are the things that I want to make you aware of, because you might have friends and family who deal with this. He was easily agitated. He was very irritable. Nothing seemed quite right. He had trouble focusing. He had headaches. He began to have panic attacks. And because of the panic attacks, he began to what is called in the article self-medication. So what I want you to understand here is that we focus so much on recovery in the medical sense that we don't ever hear about some of the residual effects that really affect a lot of the aspects of our lives. And in his case, it literally was diagnosed as PTSD, post-traumatic syndrome. So he's taking an antidepressant under a doctor's care and doing better. So it was really surprising to me to read this article, because this is from a medical journal, but yet it's not something that we hear about medically. The next story that I want to share with you is a different story. And it comes from Forbes, but the research here that is shared from Forbes is from several different studies, both in the United States and in the UK. And it talks about some psychological, what they call psychological aftershocks of the mental lockdown during this pandemic. I realize this is not all good news, but I want you to understand the scope of things. And I want you to understand that in the last part of what I'm sharing today, I'm going to remind you of what you need to do to stay healthy. So the gist of the research is that self-isolation, as we all know, is ending at different times in different states. And in some areas, including Florida, it almost looks like it's rolling back again. And we don't really know what the new normal is, but each of us is going to need to prepare to re-enter the world of physical proximity and reconnecting with friends and neighbors and loved ones. At some point, the worry about contagions will be over, but we will experience some worries and some psychological trauma of having lived under the chronic uncertainty. I think we can all deal with the uncertainty. Just turn on the news, it changes every hour. Isolation, financial insecurity, which is so real for so many people. Things that we're not thinking about what I think is kind of the second economic wave that's going to be coming. Job losses, and many people that we know or we know of have lost loved ones and have had to face family funerals that are not normal. So we can expect some effect from this. It's something we will carry over in our memories, it will be in our daydreams, and it will be in our nightmares. I was talking to someone today who had an elderly father who had been through some other things after World War II, And he likened this to some of the after effects of many of the things that people in that generation dealt with. We're in a somewhat psychological experiment with no end in sight. And the secondary epidemic of burnout and stress-related effects is going to be with us well into next year. So I'm giving you some ammunition to be prepared. In short, and perhaps unsurprisingly, people who are quarantined are very likely to develop a wide range of psychological stress disorders, including, and this is a range, low mood. Hey, we can all deal with that. Sometimes we have that every other day. Insomnia, stress, anxiety, anger, irritability, emotional exhaustion, depression, post-traumatic stress, and it really can go much deeper than that, depending on your individual personality and your individual tendencies. I'm a big believer in things that we can do to mitigate that. I do that. I do that for mood, and I'm sharing that with my 30-year-old daughter now, who's beginning to understand that the challenges in her workplace are really beginning to affect her. Because people have left to be home with children and she has additional job responsibilities. So these are real world things that we're all dealing with. In summation, without appropriate human contact, many people are at risk of prolonged disorders, including serious symptoms of depression, distress, social withdrawal. And sadly, this article says they can persist for decades. After re-entry, here are some things that we can also expect. Fear of potential health threat. And I think we can really relate to that because there is no vaccine. There are some therapeutics now that are showing great promise, but we don't have any of those guarantees yet. We haven't grown up with any of this fear. We also have the continued fear of losing loved ones. There's a lot of financial insecurity. I talked to a friend this morning who's working at the food bank in my hometown of Jacksonville. There's a real need. There is a food insecurity. More people are going to the food bank now because there's this uncertainty about the future. Morale for employees, and certainly financial devastation that I think will be coming in another round. Tremendous after effects for children and spouses. They're in very bad situations with lockdown. One of the big reasons that we're working so hard to get kids back in school. So here's the good news. Self-care and your first line of defense. You must be putting yourself first. You must be having some downtime, some quiet time, some self-care, really focus on healthy eating. The snacking is impossible to avoid. If I allow my husband to go to the grocery store, it's terrible. Rest, regular exercise, and understanding the information. And this is where I want to end. I want you to understand the valid information. I am getting ridiculous things on Facebook about how to cure COVID. How to cure COVID before it starts. Ridiculous promise from new products that suddenly are on the market with beautiful marketing and branding. Do not fall for that. Everybody is reacting based on a financial opportunity. Do not risk your health on a marketing hype or a big promise. There is no cure. There is no vaccine. There is no guaranteed treatment. There is no way that you can swallow something and avoid exposure. Please go to medical research, the National Institute of Health, the CDC. I subscribe to Harvard Health, Mayo Health, Medical News Today. Medical News Today has updates every other day that are really, really excellent. One of them that I printed out today is about this whole new thing about this exposure and this threat to young people. Some statistics and some information that will surprise you. So my plea to you today is understand there are long-term effects. Be aware of it. If you can be healthy through the duration, the chances of having after effects are greatly diminished. Do not fall for all this hype and this marketing. It just makes me so angry. Your health and continued support of good health is the number one thing that you can do. I have a great YouTube channel. I have a lot of information there that is coming from a doctor who's been practicing medicine for over 30 years. Some great information there. It doesn't cost you anything. Go to YouTube and search for my name. I have a great health and wellness page. I try to share information on that too. So my message today, be healthy, stay healthy, do all the basic things that you can do. Understand doing that can prevent the long-term effects, and do not fall for all this marketing garbage. Call me up, message, share. I'm happy to help. I love it when you join me live. Thanks for my regular viewers. I encourage everybody to share if you're coming on late. Hi, everybody. If you're coming on late, please share this because it's important, and it's really hard not to be somehow impacted with just the sheer volume of what's going on right now. So I love it when you join me live, share, comment, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Stay healthy, do all those helpful things, and call me up. Talk to you. Bye.